Thank you for sharing your meeting with Lieutenant and I today. As you can see, it's an incredible story of how we got into this position over the last 10 or 15 years. I want to share a story with you today that, while it's not an easy story to share, I believe it's certainly worthwhile if you gain some better understanding on a personal level of the consequences of prescription drug addiction. 6 years ago, our family knew virtually nothing about prescription drug abuse. It was just not on our radar. That all changed when our grandson Jeffrey was found to be using prescription drugs for non-medical purposes. His family, his friends, his school officials, the coaches, all tried to help Jeffrey, but none of us truly understood what was happening to him. In many ways, he was just a normal teenage high schooler. He participated in various school activities. He was a member of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He was active in Young Life. He played on the basketball team for 4 years. But he struggled through those last 2 years of high school as the addiction took greater control of his life. What we were viewing as a behavioral problem was in reality a disease that was taking over his life. And we did not understand it until it was too late. At some point, he had crossed that line, as Dr. Slack showed, from use to abuse to addiction. Jeffrey had always been a warm and loving person, but now we could see the changes take place in him as he became more distant from us, either from the effects of the drugs or from the shame that he did not want us to know what he was doing. By the time that we became convinced that prescription drugs were the problem, the question was, where is he getting them? We were told that they often come from people's homes. And it was then that I remembered that I had Lortab and Xanax in our kitchen cabinet, along with vitamins and cholesterol pills I take every day. These pills had been prescribed for some situations years ago, but I never took any of them. I just put them on the shelf, because that's what we all do with our pills. You put them on the shelf or you put them in a drawer, but you never get rid of them. By the time that we woke up to what was happening with Jeffrey and went to do something with those pills that we had no use for, they were already gone. Jeffrey spent the last semester of his high school in a wilderness treatment program in Alabama. He was able to finish his coursework and get his diploma from the high school that he had attended here in Hall County. He went on to Young Harris that summer and fall, but for Jeffrey, trouble always seemed to be close at hand. While he and other students were camping out in the National Forest, the camp was searched by rangers who found marijuana and evidence of underage drinking. They were charged in federal court, and he was given a year's probation starting in December 2009. We thought that would be a real wake-up call for Jeffrey, and he'd change his ways. But I can assure you that we did not yet understand the power of opiate addiction. The next month, January 2010, he transferred to Montana State University to start over with a new life, under the supervision, though, of a probation officer in Bozeman, Montana. His first drug screen after he got there showed that he had taken opioids the night before he left for Montana, and he was already in violation of his probation. After his freshman year, he went back to Montana to work for the summer with the hope of continuing college in the fall. Before he started his sophomore year, he decided that he could not deal with this problem any longer on his own, and he called his father and asked for help to get control of his addiction. His parents flew out immediately and brought him back to Georgia. And the next day, age 19, he checked himself into Talbot Recovery, which is a well-respected recovery center in Atlanta that was originally started to treat addicted doctors. Jeffrey finished 3 months residence program at Talbot, followed by 3 months of a halfway program. And in the spring of 2011, he returned back to Gainesville to live with his parents, who by then had been well educated in addiction education and what to look for. He secured a job at a local restaurant and started over with a new drug-free life. He was our happy and loving Jeffrey again. He usually finished a conversation with a big hug and saying, "I love you." By the fall of 2012, he decided he was ready to get on with his life. And he entered Gainesville State College while continuing to work part-time and live at home. If he was involved in prescription drugs again, we did not see it. His relations with his family were the best they had been in years, and we all felt sure that he was finally in control of his life and that he was focused on the future. But what we and Jeffrey did not truly understand was the power of that demon that had possessed his life several years before and still lived inside of him. On an October night in 2012, that demon called his name again. He answered that call, and it was the last conscious day of his young life. Alcohol and opiates combined to cause the condition that Dr. Slack has described, and he was gone in less than 24 hours. 21 years old, full life ahead, all cut short because of opiate addiction. I want you to think about it. Can you start to grasp the power of this addiction? Jeffrey had a life of help and support that most young people would never have. He had the best of rehabilitation treatment. He had the support from a loving family that had become well educated in the subject of addiction and treatment. He had a good job that he enjoyed, and he was back in college. He had good friends around him. And over the last 2 years, he had savored and enjoyed a drug-free life. And yet, in spite of all of that, the demon was still there and had the power over him. And it cost him his life. In 1983, a movie called War Games came out. I've seen it a lot of times. It's the story of a young man who hacks into the Department of Defense computer and engages the computer in a game called thermonuclear war. Only to realize as the game progresses that the computer is playing for real. And it can't be stopped. And it's actually going to cause massive worldwide destruction. In the end of the movie, the young man tricks the computer into evaluating all the possible scenarios of thermonuclear war. And if you remember the movie, the screens are all around the room and the rockets are going off and the bombs are exploding in every country in the world. And it goes on very dramatically and then suddenly stops. And on that screen in the middle, and in a computer-generated voice, it says, "This is a very strange game. The only winning move is not to play. The only winning move is not to play the game." Jeffrey's story proves to us that seeing that people never play the game is so much more successful than trying to deal with the consequences of the game. We all need to see that those around us always make the winning move and are never drawn into the game of prescription drug abuse and addiction. This is really not hard to understand. What's hard is just getting people's attention to see the problem and change their mindset about keeping and sharing prescription drugs. Jeffrey's family believes that his first experience with opioids occurred when he had his wisdom teeth out as a teenager, and he liked the effect of the drugs. We don't know where his last opioid that night came from, but they may have come from someone's medicine cabinet, because statistics show that we are the major supplier of these drugs. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has estimated that 70% of the prescription drugs that are diverted from their intended use to some form of abuse are coming from family and friends. In addition, other people that come into our homes may steal our drugs and sell them or use them. We believe that every prescription should be accompanied by some minimum drug safety information, including these 4 steps, which may keep a patient from either becoming a victim or from becoming an unintentional drug supplier. Take your medicines only as prescribed by your physician and only in the minimum amount needed for your condition. Do not take anyone else's medicines. It's both illegal and dangerous. Lock up your medicines in a secure place that others will not have access to them. Do not stockpile your medicines for future potential use. When your medical condition no longer requires them, properly dispose of them. We have drop boxes at both the Gainesville Police Department and the Sheriff's Office to do that. We have to overcome our cultural belief that we never throw away medicines. Doing just these 4 steps could greatly reduce that large amount of diversion that comes early in the process before addiction takes control. Someone might never play the game because the pills were not on your shelf. You will never know those that you may have saved from a life of addiction by not having those pills available. Recently in Hall County, our volunteers have distributed to healthcare facilities over 22,000 of the brochures that you saw on your seat, and over 1,200 posters like this. The challenge now is to see that those facilities keep those posters and brochures on display for patients to see. You can help by encouraging professionals that you know to be responsible, to promote this message, and make it a part of every prescription. In our community today, it's really difficult to find a family that has not been touched by someone with addiction. You need to understand, as Dr. Slack has pointed out, that this involves a chemical neurological change in the brain that seldom, if ever, returns to normal. Preventing addiction is so much more successful than treating addiction. Jeffrey was our grandson, but the victim could be your child or your grandchild or your spouse or your co-worker or your doctor or lawyer or your minister or your best friend. Or it could be you, or it could be me, because none of us are truly immune from this disease. Please be aware of the dangers. Be observant of others around you. And be very careful for yourself. And think about it. Remember at least 3 things from this. This is a major epidemic, and each of us have a part to play in stopping it. Addiction is a lifetime disease. It's easier to prevent than it is to treat. These simple 4 steps can help you be part of the solution, but there's really so much more you can do. This is a problem that our society has created, but it doesn't have to be this way. And working together, we can make a difference. So I ask you to please be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. Thank you for letting me share Jeffrey's story with you.